So far we saw two ways how users can get values to the server, how the server can accept values. One of them was as query attributes or query strings, so in GET request. The other one is POST request. But there is a third major way that many modern applications use, and let me show you how it works. So we are in the params in routes example inside, and then I started with SpluckUp. Okay, and now I can go and visit this website. So it's localhost 5000 as usual, and here are those links that are there. And if I click on the first one, you can see that the URL is /user/1, and then that's how somehow processes and can return the value number 1. And here basically you can put anything. So I say I put 23, then it will return the 23, and if I post anything, then it will be returning anything, and if I put in -2, then it's going to be returning -2. Okay, so basically any value it can accept. And the idea here is that for some websites you might want to have the display of some profile information, and for some websites here you would put a username. Let's say, I don't know, LinkedIn has this kind of idea that you have a pass, and then, but basically every major website has this type of where you have public profiles. Okay, and in this example, what we are going to see is that we are accepting here numbers basically, or we are planning to accept numbers. Okay, so let's see how it's done. The first part is only that HTML that allows us basically to click various links and get to various places here. This is the route that's interesting. So we have the /user and then a colon and ID. So this ID is just basically a placeholder, or colon ID is a placeholder. ID is just some variable name that we decided to use. Doesn't matter, you can put anything there, okay, any valid, I guess any string. And then in the route, we can use the route parameters object. Okay, so this is the third kind of object, route parameters, and using the get method, asking what was the ID that was placed basically here, that was in part of the pass. And that ID in case just gets in this $ID and then is being returned. Obviously in a real application here, between these two, we'll have some major operations getting from the database some information and returning that to the web server. So this is basically how you can accept parameters and route. And here there are a couple of other things that you can do. One thing that you can't pass, so you can, if there's an example for here, if we give here ABC and DEF, okay, so there is a slash in it, that's not acceptable. So basically anything you can put, I think anything, let's put a hash mark, I don't know, the hash mark would do something else, but a dash, let's say, okay. I mean, every valid character that you can put there, I think, how do you write it? Maybe I just put a space there and then it will work. Okay, so everything can be there except slash. But there is sort of an issue here, because we thought that's going to be an ID, and now we can get anything. And let's say that we would like really an ID. So for that we'll have to do something. But before we do that, let's just have a quick peek. How do we test this? And that's not really something very special, because we just have to send the GET request to that URL that we wanted, to the path that we wanted, and then check the content. In this case, it's very simple because we are returning the same value that was the part of the path. And if you would like to check other values, then of course you can check if you can pass anything, and then you get back that anything, that same anything. Now, again, what I really would like is to restrict this to be only numbers, okay, integer numbers. And you can do that because Dancer is using the type tiny library behind the scenes, so you can have various integer types. And I think I put here a link showing what are the defaults now. So that's actually the standard types. I think it's using the right now the standard types, but you can use different classes from here and then use various types of data. There are places for positive integer, negative integer, whatever. But for now, we just use this int. So this basically says that this route is going to be accept anything /user /something as long as this something is an integer. And then still we just return the values. So if we try this one, so this is in the parameters in routes int example. So we can just quit this and params in routes int. Okay, and here I start it again. And now if I go back to the server and try to, for example, this ABCDEF, then it will find that it will tell us that it can't find the route. So because this route that we created here, this doesn't match it, okay? Because this one doesn't match anything that's not an integer. And then we can try here, put 23, and that works. And you might notice that also minus 23 works, because that's also an integer. But on the other hand, if I put 1.1, that's not found because that's not an integer. So far is good, and then we can also write the test if you really like. Here I just explicitly testing if I send just something else, not an integer, then I get back really 404. And I can also check whether -1 is really working, if that's what I want. But probably not that's not what I want. Probably what I want is that this route will return only data if we really have some ID in the database that's connected to this. So using that ID number, okay? Of course, in our case, we are just showing the ID, but let's say we actually check some database. So what will happen is that we get to this route, okay, to get to this point, and we can't really set here something that would look up the database. We can just set types here. So we'll arrive in the route for every integer, and then within this route, okay, we'll have to make the decision. So there we'll have to have a database lookup and decide whether it's something that we can handle or that's something that we have to return a 404 error because that username isn't found yet. Okay, and that's usually what you would like to return there. So if someone just types in some username on LinkedIn, for example, that doesn't exist, just to access the profile of a user that doesn't exist, maybe they make a typo, then they probably going to get back a 404 not found error. So that's what we can see in the next example. Again, the first part is not really interesting, and this is the interesting part. So what we have here is I sort of demoed here a method calling a function called valid ID that would get the ID and return either true or false if that ID is a valid. Now this would be the database lookup, of course. I don't use here on the database yet. I just wanted to show you how to return the 404 page. So here we just check if the ID is less than 0, and if it's less or equal to 0, so not positive, then we return false. So we just return undef basically, that's false. Here we return if the number is bigger than 42, again we just sort of play as if we had a database that only has the numbers between 1 and 41. So this also returns false, and everything else, so the numbers between 1 and 41, will return true. And so if this validation fails, if the ID is not in the database, then we set the status to not found. You might remember we set something similar earlier. Okay, so we can set the status this way, and then return some text. Okay, and now if I try to run this, so this is the return 404 page or example, and so I go there, return 404, and I run this pluckup. And if I go to the web page and run user 23, then I get back 23, and let me open the network, the web developer and the network part. Okay, so if I reload it now again, then I get, you can see here, you get a 200, well, here, well, that's the favicon. Okay, so you get a 200 request. That was successful. The favicon was a 404, but that doesn't really matter. As you might remember, that's just the icon that would come here, and we don't have it. And if I try to access -1, then it will return me the no such ID text. So it's not the standard text that Dancer provides. It's already my 404 report, and also the message from the status code of that page is going to be 404. So if there is going to be a script, so a regular user only will see this message. They won't care about the 404. But if you write a program that will access this page programmatically, then that will also actually get the 404 status code. So it's going to be easier for a programmatic application to know that that page is not found. And so is the same with numbers. So 41 would still go and return 200, okay, and the number, and 42 will already give no such ID and 404. So basically that's it for the basics of the route handling. So you can map a route, and then later we'll see a couple of others, but you can also look up in the documentation how otherwise you can define these routes and map them basically to one function, and then within that function use that value that was added here in the URL.